Alright, welcome guys. We are going to be discussing way too early MVP candidates.
Yeah.
We will be talking about the obvious, sleepers, and then the deep sleepers, which has some surprises. Alright, you want to point out our first obvious?
Tom Brady, of course.
He's always in it. He has had 1,092 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. It's a big number that's so little. 0 interceptions.
Yes. Last year's touchdown
To interception ratio was 14-1.
Yeah, which is best in the league.
Definitely, by far. And then, I'll name Rodgers is number 2 with 1,146 yards and 10 touchdowns, but his crucial factor, he has 3 interceptions.
Yes.
So that we'll get more in depth into this in just a minute.
Drew Brees, his stats always put him in the fight for big, everything. 867 yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
0 interceptions, big number.
Yeah. And he's thrown a decent amount of yards, I guess, for first 3 games.
Especially with not having his Willie Snead for the first 3 games. He will be having Willie Snead for this game, which I think will really help him. He's a bigger target that's not just speed.
And if I feel like if he doesn't retire after this next year, which he shouldn't, he will break Peyton Manning's all-time passing yard record. Because he is right now less than 5,000 yards from it, which he could do.
Possibly this year, but probably not this year.
Yeah, it'll be early next season.
Our last obvious choice, which really isn't that obvious, his stats don't blow you away on paper. 867 yards, only 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Has the same amount of interceptions as Rodgers, but Rodgers has about 3 touchdowns per interception. Well, Matt Ryan almost throws 1 interception per touchdown. Out of these obvious choices, who is the obvious choice? I think there's really 2 guys you can really narrow it down to. At this point, Rodgers has already played a game this week, so you can't really base it on that.
Yeah, Rodgers will be second in stats after this week because, Brady's always putting up 5 passing touchdowns, 350 yards a game. I mean, his stats blow you away, but it's going to be another close game because he barely got the win last week. So
yeah, the defense, that was not necessarily his fault, though. The defense couldn't do nothing.
But he did he did do good in the clutch, and he threw a really nice pass for Brandon Cooks.
Tom Brady, definitely an obvious choice here. Not necessarily super obvious. We'll get more in depth into this later. Our sleeper picks include Matt Stafford, who I have winning the MVP this year. Let me finish. You always know the Lions start off slow. Then they go on this big win streak, and I feel like Matt Stafford will throw for 3,000, 4,000 pass yards in just that streak, not just the whole season. Matt Stafford has 678 yards and 7 touchdowns and 1 interception this year. 1 interception, such a big but little number.
The thing about Stafford gets me is that usually it's flip-flopped, but this year the offense isn't pulling the team. It's the defense. The defense has played 1,000 times better than the offense has this year. The offense isn't clicking yet. They still haven't gotten a run game sufficiently going.
They haven't had a run game sufficiently going. They haven't had one 100-yard rusher in a game since Reggie Bush in 2013.
But usually, they try to get runners. They Zach Zenner towards the end of last year. He was getting better and better.
Where has Zach Zenner been this year?
3rd on the roster.
Comment down below where you think he's been. I think he should be starting.
I don't think starting, but definitely starting 3rd down back, 2nd string over Abdullah, because I don't like Abdullah. He's really not a good running back. But the defense, if the defense can continue to
pull the team, then Matt Stafford will find his groove with Golden Tate, Kenny Galladay, Eric Ebron, and they'll just be smooth sailing.
I think Lions do not sign Eric Ebron at his next contract because Eric Ebron has dropped more passes
and Brandon Pettigrew.
And I remember that year. That was bad.
All right, what's our next sleeper, which is actually very surprising?
Trevor Siemian, 709 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions.
He really led the team over the Cowboys, which is not
Yeah.
an easy team.
After an hour and a half weather delay.
Yeah, so you can see how he might have been less stretched out, but still, he dominated that game. He just dominated it. C.J. Anderson helped, but he has really been their main source of
And
offense.
of course, with the defense continuously staying consistent, it gives Siemian a chance for the offense to
Siemian
improve.
will lead them to the playoffs. I don't know if he's good enough to lead. I think the defense may be good enough to bring them to the conference championship. But it really all depends on how Trevor Siemian plays. If he plays at a higher level, he can bring them to the Super Bowl just riding off their defense.
Now, that's where I have to argue with you. Their division is too tough to do that. Unless 3 people in that division can go.
The Raiders have not met our expectations.
They have not met our expectations.
The
but they
Chiefs
always
have exceeded our expectations. They will make the wild card, and I think the defense will pull them through, at least to the divisional.
Now, this will have to come up when we start discussing records and playoff things.
Don't worry, we'll be talking about NBA later when NBA season gets going.
Yeah, I mean, the game just came out, so... yeah.
All right, so our next candidate, obviously, I'm happy about this. Russell Wilson, who has thrown for 729 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. I feel like, obviously, it's been a slow start for the offense. He threw 4 touchdowns against the Titans, and we know it's going to be a slaughterhouse against the Colts. They're going to get... I don't even know. The defense is Colts defense is trash. The offense is riding on Jacoby Brissett. And I think they're just breaking down from the inside. I think Seattle can put up 30 points on them, and I think the defense can hold them to 10.
The offense this weekend all relies on if Doug Baldwin plays or not.
Well, they do have some guys. I feel like I kind of want Doug Baldwin to be out. Excuse me for saying this, but I want to see how Tanner McAvoy plays when he's put in the 3rd slot. He's playing 4th slot right now. I want to see how he does in the 3rd slot instead of getting more snaps.
Jimmy Graham also needs to really step it
Yeah,
up.
he had 7 catches for 74 yards against the Titans. He stepped up compared to what he's done against the Packers and 49ers combined. So I think if he does, it's still low compared to him, but if he can step it up against the Colts, and I think that's the best team to step it up against and gain momentum.
And this running game needs to pick
Chris
it up.
Carson is definitely our future at running back. Chris Carson is definitely the future for the Seahawks at running back. He's getting 50 yards plus every game behind this offensive line, which is crazy to me. He's obviously our primary running back at this point. Eddie Lacy will not be re-signed next year. Thomas Rawls will not be re-signed. If not, I think C.J. Prosise will be traded or cut.
But that leads to the thing, though. Do you think Chris Carson can consistently do it next year? The Seahawks really need to improve that line.
I really don't think we should re-sign Jimmy Graham, because Luke Wilson was producing just fine on his own. If we get rid of Jimmy Graham, that releases about $15 million of cap space just for offensive line.
Yeah.
And defensive presence we could lock up Richard Sherman. We could lock up Bobby Wagner. We could lock up Russell Wilson. And then we could lock up at least one good offensive lineman. But we're not talking about that. Let's move on to the next one.
Alex Smith, who threw 774 yards and 7 touchdowns. Which, it's kind of bad when the first game he threw 360, which is half of the yards he has now, pretty much. And he threw for 4 touchdowns. Which shows that he's kind of been on the decrease since week 1.
Well, really, we've seen the Patriots' defense be easy this year. The Texans, who are known for their defense, scored 33. If the Patriots go to the playoffs, which we know they obviously are, they would be bringing the worst defense in history to the playoffs. They are 32nd in the league for defense. They have allowed 467 yards per game this year.
which is really sad, knowing that the Colts have a horrible defense. The Packers are injury struck right now. They have a bad defense. And
Cowboys even.
Yeah, Cowboys don't have a secondary worth of crap. So
we'll see how that defense progresses when Dante Hightower gets back. Stephon Gilmore and Malcolm Butler both need to produce more. Our deep sleepers. Here we go. You want to list the first one? I want to list the second one. So
Jared Goff.
Goff.
He threw 817 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception.
I feel like he's benefited on the fact that Sammy Watkins came to Los Angeles. I feel like he's riding on Robert Woods, and I feel like if he involves Cooper Kupp more, he can even up these touchdowns. He's a big red zone threat. He's about 6'2", and he's a big red zone threat. I feel like he can really add to this receiving core.
And they also have a really good running back this year in Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley is
really good.
Definitely better than last year.
And when you're talking about the defense for this team, there's no stopping Aaron Donald. He is just a madman.
If they don't re-sign him to the contract he wants, then they're making a mistake.
Yes.
And then Carson Wentz is our other deep sleeper. 816 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, not to mention miraculous plays. That play against the Redskins, and then driving the offense close enough to where Jake Elliott could score that 61-yard field goal. He has just been miraculous. He's been terrific this season.
Now, I think that game against the Giants, I think Jake Elliott deserves all the credit on that last drive, because not many people as young as he could, like that, who haven't really progressed in the NFL yet, can kick a 61-yarder, and it could probably went for about a 64, probably tied with Matt Prater's if he was about 3 yards back. I think he could have made it.
Oh, I mean, he still has 20-plus years to develop.
Yeah.
I mean, kickers always last.
I mean, look at Matt Bryant.
Right. Kickers always last 15 to 20 years, so who knows what he'll be kicking in 5 years.
Yeah.
60, 70-yard field goals.
Yeah. I mean, Prater holds the record at 64, and he's like, 38 now? Something? Mid-30s?
Yeah, so we'll see what he does when he has time. But that's not what you're here to really talk about. Who is your obvious MVP choice out of the sleepers?
Stafford.
That's who I picked, Stafford. I'm going to try and make a legitimate... We both have to make a legitimate test for our quarterbacks of our teams. Mine's Russell Wilson, his is Aaron Rodgers. We both have to make a legitimate case. He doesn't really have to because it's Aaron Rodgers. I do. Russell Wilson's not putting up numbers we thought he would, and so I have to make a legitimate case. Goff and Wentz, who is your pick? I pick Wentz because it's Wentz. He's gonna do better in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I say Wentz. You guys haven't seen this video yet because it is not uploaded yet, but we made a video about NFC predictions, and I had Eagles upsetting at least 3 times late in the season, just because I know Carson Wentz can pull it off.
He has the talent.
He does.
So, here I'm going to make a legitimate case towards Russell Wilson. Now, we have seen this offense struggle throughout this first 3 weeks.
Yes.
2 weeks. Third week, 27 points, all coming off Russell Wilson's back. 347 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. All those 27 points came off Russell Wilson's back. And I feel like then we're just getting started. We're playing the Colts, which Russell Wilson can easily put up 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against, making his total into the 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. And with no legitimate defensive backs in the Colts, I don't think he'll throw a single interception, which keeps his interception total at 0. Then they also play the 49ers again.
Well, the 49ers are always just, for some reason, since it's a rivalry, there's just always some sort of spurt in the 49ers.
Again, offense is spurting now. Offensive line only allowed 1 sack against the Titans, so I think they can control a good pass rush. Jarrell Casey's on that pass rush. Brian Arakpo. Good defensive linemen, or outside linebackers, who are rushing the quarterback that they only allowed 1 sack from. I think that we can defend that, and I think now that our offense is getting going, I think we can put up 20 points on the 49ers off Russell Wilson, which adds to his total. They don't have any really legitimate defensive backs, which adds to that. Cardinals are getting burned every game. They don't have any legitimate defensive backs besides Pat Pete and Tyrann Mathieu. Slants across the middle on the left side will work every time. As long as we don't test it deep on the left side, we don't really have anything wrong. If we do a wheel with Jimmy Graham on the outside, while Doug Baldwin runs in a slant while they're running man coverage with Patrick Peterson, they lost, what's his name? He went to the Tony Jefferson. They lost Tony Jefferson, a legitimate strong safety, one of the elite guys in the league. They lost him, which means a wheel to the outside with Jimmy Graham, that'll work every time. Coming off Russell Wilson's back, which adds his total, I say 4,500 yards this year and 30 touchdowns, possibly. It's all about consistency at this point. As long as Russell Wilson's consistent, I don't see any problem with him winning the MVP. So, you have any notes on that?
I agree with you, but just because I know from looking at the Seahawks schedule, it gets a little bit harder towards the end of the season.
True.
Which means, and the Seahawks always kind of go into a little slump at the end of the season, but then they pick back up in the playoffs. But I don't know how the end of the season will go yet, just because it's not here yet.
True.
Anything can happen. It's the NFL. The first 3 weeks have been crazy. I doubt this one's going to be any less crazy. It's just, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these games coming up for some of these teams, some interesting people come out and are all of a sudden in the MVP talk that we haven't talked about.
Right.
Like,
look at Trevor Siemian, Jared Goff. Soon, later in the year, we could have, we could be putting Deshaun Watson.
Eli Manning.
Eli Manning could break out.
He's looking pretty good in that game with Odell.
Eli Manning could break out. Really, any time Alex Smith could break out more. Kareem Hunt could continue putting up numbers like he is, and he could come in this number. So it's all
last year you
arguments.
even had you had Khalil Mack in there last year, even in the talk last year, which is really interesting, a defensive player in it.
So, thank you guys for watching.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. All right, see you later. Cue the outro.